we brought our baby Kayla to the New York Stock Exchange, and she got to see mommy stand on the bell podium and ring the closing bell. And about 130 million people watch this ceremony every single day.
Welcome, everybody. This is Ordinary People with Extraordinary Stories. I'm Chana Weisberg, host of this podcast. Joining me today is a very special woman. Her name is Devorah Bachvili. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Israel.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you. And you're in Lod in Israel?
Yes, I live in Shikun Chabad in Lod, yes.
Wow. Okay. So Devorah is joining us. And what I found fascinating about Devorah is how successful she is in business, but yet her priority is and always remains her family. In fact, the first interview that I interviewed her, the pre-interview, it was so cute how you were just like running to your newborn. And then juggling, I don't know, your 2-year-old, or how old was that?
I was with my 4-year-old, yeah.
4-year-old, just juggling it all. And it just made me realize this is what women are all about. This is what we're juggling constantly in our lives. But I found your story very fascinating. So a couple of weeks ago, you were actually in New York at the New York Stock Exchange, and you were up there at the very big ceremony, the very important ceremony of ringing the bell together with the president of the New York Stock Exchange. Can you tell us a little about that? What brought you there and how did you get there?
Sure. So, a little bit about me. So, my background is in finance and economics. I was graduated from the University of Pittsburgh. I'm raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, member of the Chabad community, and my parents and most of my siblings still live there. So I attended Pitt, graduated with a degree in finance and economics, and I did a little bit in banking, a little bit in the diamond industry, actually, kind of finding my way. And then about 8 years ago, I made Aliyah to Israel. I met my husband. We were shidduch, married, and I moved here to Israel. And I joined the Intercontinental Exchange, where I started working actually in their derivatives business, doing data and analytics for the data arm, I guess, of the New York Stock Exchange. So how it works is that Intercontinental Exchange is actually the parent company and has many different silos. One of those silos is the data business, and another silo is the New York Stock Exchange, and there are many other lines of business. So we kind of all work together, but sort of have a separate remit.
So you're working from Israel, like with the internet, with the ICE. Intercontinental Exchange.
Correct. So in Israel, there's about 300 people that work for, we call it ICE. Although I know in America, ICE sounds a bit different than it does in Israel. Right. There's a different connotation, but ICE, Intercontinental Exchange. So yes, about 300 people that work here, mostly in research and development, because that's kind of the Yiddish cup is here in Israel, and the Jewish mind is very, very strong in that. So I represent the more of the sales and the business development arm of the business, and my background is in finance. So when we would go to banks, we go to corporations or asset managers who are looking for data or solutions for managing assets, or creating algorithms and these kind of different things. So they do need to use a lot of technology, and that's really what I represent. So my focus is the business development part of that in Israel, in Turkey, Dubai, Bahrain, Qatar, a lot of North African countries. So that's what I do here today. And this past year was, Baruch Hashem, one of our most successful years. We were actually awarded the Top Performer Award globally for the entire company. And with that, it was kind of cool. and with that came the honor that is given to the top performer globally is to ring the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange. So this year was a year with a lot of change. There's obviously a war going on in Israel right now. It's not an easy time. We had a lot of issues, and on top of that, I actually was expecting my 5th child, and a lot of people, ask me, like, how is it possible to be successful when you're under so much stress? You have your family stress, obviously. You have missiles flying over your head. I can't tell you how many meetings got interrupted. Where I was like, siren goes off. See, we have to quickly run away. You don't tell your client goodbye. You kind of come back
Right.
after 10 minutes or so and say, sorry, there was a missile warning. We had to go to the
Sure.
safe room. Um,
Wow. Yeah, we
yeah,
don't, you don't even think about that, but yeah, on a day-to-day basis, I mean, so much is going on. How
yeah.
did you deal with all that stress?
I think it comes down to just being really authentic and being really honest with your clients. So during that time where we did have a lot of sirens, I would preface the meeting with, if we do get interrupted, I'll be back in 10 minutes, hopefully.
Mhm.
And many of our clients, were very, understanding about that. They understood that this is something we obviously can't control. It's really spontaneous if that happens. So we would come back and they would all ask us, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" And, Baruch Hashem.
Wow. Wow.
Um, Most of the time it is, we're very lucky we have the Iron Dome system and we have the most wonderful army in the world. And, God should just protect all of our soldiers. We obviously pray for them every day.
Amen.
So, yeah, it wasn't an easy time. It really was a difficult year. And on top of that, of course, like I said, I was expecting. So I knew that I'd have to go on maternity leave at some point. So we really only got about, 10 months out of the year to work. And with all that, we were able to succeed, the targets that set by the company by a huge amount. Um,
Wow.
yeah. And with
Amazing.
that was that honor. So when they told me, listen, you're going to be given this award to ring the closing bell, I almost didn't want to go because I have a 2 month old, and I was thinking to myself, how is it possible to, travel from Tel Aviv to New York, and it's a schlep. It's also winter in New York. It's very cold.
Right.
Um, and I was thinking, how are we going to make this work? And really, the only way it can work, I think, is if you have a very supportive environment. And my husband is 100%, 120%, how many times my partner in everything that I do. And he said, let's fly together. Let's go together. We'll take the baby with us. My mother in law, who again is also the most amazing woman ever, she watched my four other kids who are young children. She watched them for the week that we were gone, and we flew together to New York. And we brought our baby Kayla to the New York Stock Exchange, and she got to see mommy stand on the bell podium and
Wow.
ring the closing bell. And about 130 million people watch this ceremony every single day. So
Wow.
it was a huge honor, but I have to say it was very humbling that I could be that example in some way, not just to many people who don't know who I am on screen, but also to my daughter who was actually there with me, and my husband also on the floor there supporting me, and my brother actually came as well, his wife, some other family members. So, yeah, very humbling and very, very much creating a great experience.
So I'm going to get to your children in a minute, but first let's focus a little on this experience. So I know when you came, you were actually wearing a necklace with the hostages, and you obviously were dressed the way that you're dressed as a modest Jewish woman, wearing a sheitel, which is a hair covering, a wig, wearing modest clothing. Tell us about how you were received. How did people look at you, and why did you feel it was so important to do that?
Well, I thought to myself, and I think this is a question that many of us, consider as we go through life is, what am I doing here? What am I doing as part of this job? It's a job that I do. I enjoy it very much. I have a great time meeting clients, talking to people, but I always feel like the Rebbe asked from us more. He wanted us to know that wherever we are, we have a shlichut, we have a sort of a job to do. That we're here. It's not just about going there to do the job, but what else is there behind the scenes? And I realized that if I was kind of given this honor this year, why didn't it happen last year or the year before? Many opportunities that it could have happened, that we worked really, really hard and I wasn't pregnant and we could fly and there was no war. Why was this honor given to me this year specifically? And I realized that, 130 million people or whatever it is, plus minus, watch this ceremony every day. There must be something that I could do here. What is my shlichus in this role? And I thought to myself, okay, there's no, you're not giving a speech or anything. I'm going to put the necklace on for the soldier, for the hostages. It's for the soldiers and for the hostages. It says that my heart is with you in Gaza. It raises awareness for the hostages that are unfortunately still there. Raises awareness for our soldiers that are fighting for us every single day, that are protecting us. Um, and I thought that if I could do something, sort of an unspoken symbol, that would be the best thing that I could do. So I wore the necklace to show solidarity with the
Mhm.
situation and to show people that we're not forgetting them. We're very much with our hearts and minds are with our soldiers and with our hostages all the time.
Beautiful. Wow. Beautiful. When I'm sure so many women are listening to this and saying, like, wow, she just say she has 5 children with a newborn? And I think your oldest is how old?
He's 7.
He's 7,
Yep.
and you're young. I mean, you're you look
I hope
beautiful
so.
and young.
Thank you.
And I'm sure they're saying, "How does she do it all? I mean, how does she balance it all?" And yet, what comes across so clearly to us is how your family is always family first. Because many people would think that a woman in your position, you're very successful at what you do, you're a successful businesswoman, you're on the world stage. How Why is it that you feel your family is your priority? Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would say I was going through life. There was one of the Rebbe's teachings that always really rang true for me, and it still does. It's kind of like the thing that I wake up every day thinking about and constantly turning over in my mind. And the Rebbe said, if you could drill diamonds or polish gems, but you're baking bread, and even though baking bread is a life sustaining activity and is very necessary, you're kind of doing a sin because you have a talent for something else. And I'm paraphrasing, that's not the exact words. I believe it's from the Hayom Yom, actually wasn't too long ago where that came up. And it kind of always pushed me through, what am I really doing? What could I really do if I wanted to maximize my potential, not just as a businesswoman, but as a mother, as a wife, as a member of the community? Then I have to think about all of these different facets of my life and how can I maximize my potential? How can I use all of my talents to serve God and to bring light into the world? So in being a mother, we talked about the business side a little bit, but in being a mother is the most important role that I think any woman can possibly have, as well as being a wife. I will not say that that's secondary. That is also extremely important. But being a mother is different because, these are neshamos, these are souls that you were privileged to bring down into the world. As we learned that, the souls actually choose us to be
Hmm.
their parents, right? Which is incredible if you think about it. There are 5 souls that chose me as their mother, and I have such a privilege, such a zchus to be there for them. How can I help them be the best that they can be? Whether it's showing them an example. I have 2 daughters, showing them what it means to be a mother, hopefully, the best way that they can, or to my sons, what it means, to push yourself and to maximize their potential. Um, I think that's got to be key. So yeah, I do have a very intense workload, but I do so the early morning shift with the kids. My husband actually goes to work early so that he can do the afternoons. So that's how we split the workload, and I think that's kind of every couple sort of has to figure out what works best for them as far as juggling everything. But I do the morning breakfast. I take the kids to school, and then I go to my second job, go to work, and then come home and between I would say when I come home, I would say 5:30, 6 o'clock, whenever that is, until about 9 after the kids go to bed. I don't touch the phone unless it's some sort of emergency, but I really try to put that to the side. We do all kinds of after school activities, soccer, karate. We do music. We do languages. I make it a very much a priority to sit with my kids on homework. Both me and my husband do. I really want to go through what they're doing every day, talk to their teachers. I think in the end of the day, if we're all working hard and trying to make a living, but my kids are not, getting the attention that they need, then it's sort of like, what am I doing this for? I want to make sure that I'm also going to be there for them and push them and help them as much as they can. Because as I said, their soul chose me. So I have to do the best job that I possibly can.
That's incredible. That's incredible that you keep your priorities so focused also. And you're just, the quality time that you spend with your children. I mean, I think I saw it in real life when we had that pre-interview and you were just juggling your children.
Yeah.
It was beautiful to see, a real life mother and a real life woman just doing everything, but doing it so with so much heart and so much love. Is that your baby? That's in
That
the
is my
background
baby. I think so. I think it is.
now?
I,
Okay.
I, I think my husband's with her. I hope she's
Okay.
okay.
No problem. And you also in that pre-interview, you were also talking about how you cook with your children and you make nutritious home cooked meals. It sounds like Wonder Woman.
I don't know if it's Wonder Woman. I think everybody has to choose what they can do and what their priorities are. So I
Right.
actually once saw a really great quote from I think a CEO or a very high executive on LinkedIn. She said, "Anything that doesn't create memories, outsource to
Mhm.
somebody else."
Mhm.
So I love to cook. So I cook with my kids. We make homemade donuts. We do all kinds of fun stuff that creates memories for them, and I think that that's important. So I do that. We do fresh challahs. We make little challahs for everybody on Fridays. But I don't feel that ironing creates memories for me. So I do
Right.
have help with the ironing and, laundry, things that are a bit more difficult to get to. I do outsource that as much as I can. I think,
Of course.
you have some time and you only get 24 hours in a day. So if it doesn't create a memory, then it's gonna try to find a way to get to somebody else. But there are certain things I think that are really important. I think, healthy food is part of being a mom. We try our that we can to do organic and to cook well and
Hmm.
do the best that we can.
Amazing, really amazing. That's really so beautiful. Now, tell us a little about you touched on it a little, saying the impact that you have on people in your position. I mean, you're meeting with a lot of different people in the business world, a lot of very high profile people, and you travel to a lot of different places as well. Tell us a little about the kind of impact that you can have on their lives.
For sure. I think that actually wherever you go, you can really make an impact. I don't think we know. Sometimes we can be sitting on the train or, driving the car or even walking to school with your kids, or I don't think we know who's looking at us and what they think. And wherever you go, you can really make an impact. Some things that kind of stand out. So I work in a place where I think the only Haredi woman, the only maybe Hasidic woman. There might be a few others, but they're in less frontal facing roles. And I work with mostly people who are, I would say, more traditional, maybe Masarti, as well as people who are not religious at all. And when I first joined the team, I think there was a lot of hostility. People had expectations that, she's religious, so she's going to tell us, how to change our life. She's going to tell us that we're not living life the right way. And of course, that was never the approach. The Rebbe taught us very clearly that it's about Havat Yisrael, it's about loving your fellow Jew, and it's about being a dugma chaya, by being a living example. So, when I first came, I would, again, we are Chabadnikim. We have to do our shlichus. So on Purim, I asked HR, is it okay if I bring my husband? He can read the Megillah for everybody.
Mhm.
And she looked at me like, what, like, why? Purim, as what's Megillah have to do with Purim? I mean, unfortunately, in Israel, there is sort of like a dissonance between what actually Purim is and what it has become. So I said, whoever wants to come, if I can send an email out. And she said, you cannot use the company email. You can tell people if they want to come, they can show up. So
Mhm.
fast forward to 7 years later, we use the company email. She sends it across the entire company, and we had like 15 people show up this past Purim. And in fact, I think
And what brought that change? It was just your attitude, how you approached it? Like how did you get them to change their mind like that?
I think as you work with people and you show them that living a religious life doesn't have to be this scary black and white, hard cut, the world is a horrible place kind of approach. I think that if you show them as an example, again, just we're normal people. We have normal lives the same way that you might not be religious, but you have kids. I also have kids. We have the same concerns. Did my kid have a good sleep? Did he eat breakfast well? Is he happy? It's the exact same concerns that someone who's not religious has. We're very much we have much more in common than we do not in common. We're all people in the end of the day. And I think that approach, again, being the dugma chaya, showing the example, um, when I first joined, people asked me, "But you're religious, but aren't you supposed to cover your hair?" And I was like, "It's a
Mhm.
wig." And they're like, "Oh, really?" They were completely taken aback. Compliments to
Sure.
the Shetelmacher for sure for that help.
Right.
um,
Absolutely. It looks
but
great.
oh,
Yeah.
thank you, thank you. But I think again, it's just about showing that we are real people. We all have the same
Right.
concerns, and we have much more in common than not. And I think pushing on commonality. One of the people that I speak with the most at the company, she's a good friend of mine, is complete. I would say she's anti-religious to an extent, even, but we have great conversations, and we can find things in common. And she's a very intelligent woman, and I get some great advice from her. And recently, we started speaking Yiddish to each other because I haven't spoken it for many years, and she thought it was interesting as a Jewish style, I guess Jewish folklore. So, like I said, things change, and by just showing up every day, being that example, and staying true to that example, being authentic, I think that's what brings people in.
You speak a lot about your authenticity. Can you tell us a little, like, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think authenticity is something that I want to think about a good way to say it. It means being true to yourself. And
Hmm.
that starts with actually spending time to get to know yourself. One of the things that we started in the community is a weekly shir that we host on Shar HaBitachon, the Gate of Trust. The Rebbe was very much a proponent of business people learning the Gate of Trust, Shar HaBitachon, as a segula for sort of a help with livelihood. If a person's struggling with their livelihood, the Rebbe encouraged them to learn Shar HaBitachon, not once, not twice, but even 3 times, to keep learning it. And one of the things Shar HaBitachon says, if you want to have trust in God, figure out exactly why you're doing this specific action. Why are you going on this business trip? What are you going to be really doing here? Find out what drill down to the real you. And that process really changed my focus as to how I was doing business and the approach also to myself. I give the example that when I first went to university, I had a Jewish professor actually tell me, "You'll never succeed because you don't shake men's hands." And I looked at him and I said, I don't think that's true. We're very accepting. He's like, no, no, you're not, you're just not going to make it. No one accept in business. You have to shake hands. And, I would say there was a time where I thought, okay, maybe he's right. I was young. I was just out of university, but then it wasn't me. That's not me. I'm not the person who goes out and shake men's hands. I'm not the person who's going to compromise on my values because of what somebody else is saying. And to be honest, I think if you approach the world that way and you say, this is me, this is who I am, I'm not compromising, the respect is enormous. And people are more than happy to accept you for who you are. And even more so, they're more happy to do business with you because they know that they can trust you, that you've presented a real picture of yourself. And then they feel much more at ease in doing business with you. To the extent that I have clients who call me and tell me, I want to do business with you. Tell me what tell me what you have, this, you have that. They look for that opportunity to come forward to me because or to our team, because they know that we're always trying to present the real us and not trying to cut corners.
That's an interesting point. Sometimes we think we have to bow to the world around us, and you're saying the opposite, like stay true to yourself, and people will respect that.
On
And
the
I
point
think,
of bowing, sorry, I will jump in
go
because you
ahead,
mentioned the word
go ahead.
bow. So actually, when I was received the award from the president of the New York Stock Exchange, is an incredible woman named Lynn Martin, and I respect her immensely. She actually gave me a bow in front of the audience, and she said, "No, she made it. Divorce. She's been very successful, and she lives in Israel during a war, and she had a baby, and she gave me like this bow." And it's exactly what it is. I think when you're real and you stick to who you really are, your authenticity, then the world comes towards you. And I've seen that so much um, since working in Israel and working in this role, but even more so when learning Shara Bitachon, because Bitachon is about having trust, but also having trust in yourself and having trust in who you really are. And I think that once you can discover that, again, the world bows to you in a very real way.
Hmm. And it's so common for business people to feel that it's their, it's what they've achieved, and it's their hard work, and it's their luck or their fate or their, it's all their talent that causes the results. So I guess that really takes the whole focus and kind of turns it on its head and says it's not only you, it's about God and God being a partner with you.
No, exactly. And I think it comes back again to that I guess you could say it's sort of my mantra is that if you have this talent, that means that God wants you to use it. It's
Mhm.
not just you're not supposed to take this talent and then you just hide it from the world. So one of the things that my mother was very uh, pushy about, she said that you have a talent for languages, learn as many languages as you can. It turns out, today I speak 5 languages and a couple of smattering of others, depending on, how much energy I have for that day. But it turns out they came in very handy as I travel into different countries. I speak Arabic, I speak Hebrew, I speak French, I speak Russian, English, obviously. And, you never know how many different interactions can come about, not just business dealings, because people are more than happy when you speak their own language to do business with you, but even opportunities to reach out to people that you might never thought of. I was in Dubai on
Mhm.
a business trip once, and I was walking with a bunch of colleagues in the Dubai Mall, and a man approached us, and he sort of broke in English with a heavy Russian accent. He asked us if we know where the Beit Chabad is, the Chabad house is. And so, because I speak Russian, so I started to speak with him. He explained to me that he's from Alma Ata, and he's heard of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, and he's worked with the Shaliach there, and he didn't look very religious, but he told me, "I'm looking for the Beit Chabad. Can you tell me where it is?" And we directed him to the Chabad house there. So any talent that you have, it's not just for you to use and to enjoy, although we do enjoy it. And my kids now, I try to encourage them as well to speak as many languages as they can. But it's to serve a higher purpose. Is to see how can I reach out to somebody else? What am I here to do God's work, and how can I use that wherever I am?
So using whatever talent you have, whatever abilities you have, just for the greater good, for something more than yourself. That's
For
really
the
that's
service of
for the
God,
service
right?
of God.
To make this world a better place, to make this world a dwelling place for Him. And if He created me with these abilities, it must mean that He wants me to do something with them.
Incredible. Wow, that's really special. Do you have any share stories that you can share with us about different people that you've impacted along your journey, along your career path?
Sh- Sure, sure. I'm impacted. I mean, there are many people that I've met. We had a great story that I love to tell. Was again, I was in Dubai for a conference. It's a conference where all the Middle Eastern banks get together, and it's huge population. You said from Qatar, from Bahrain, from Saudi Arabia, and all the all these banks come together in Dubai, and we were kind of chatting with people, talking, and this man walks up, and we started having a conversation. And he asked me, where do I work? And I told him that I work in Tel Aviv. And he's like, oh, that's so interesting. I have family in Tel Aviv. And this guy's name is Wasim, very Arab sounding name. And I said, oh, really? From where? He's like, well, my family is the Mizrahi family from Tel Aviv. And I said, really?
Wow.
And this guy works in Lebanon. He's works at the Lebanese bank. And I said, okay, well, tell me a little bit more. And he said, well, yeah. So my grandmother was actually Jewish, but I'm not. I'm Christian. I'm a
Mhm.
Christian, and I live in Lebanon. I said, okay, is that your grandmother from your father's side or from your mother's side? And he thinks for a minute. He says, it's from my mother's side. I said, well, Wasim, just so you know, according to Jewish law, you're actually a Jew. And he looked at me and
Wow.
said, oh, that's very interesting. Um, he said, but I'm very Christian. I'm like, okay, okay, that's fine. But I was laughing with my colleague. One of my colleagues came from London who is not Jewish. And I said, just our luck, to find within this entire huge conference of hundreds of people, like probably the one other Jew um, walking around this conference. Um, so you never know. Maybe we were there to tell this guy that he is in fact a Jew, and I don't know what he did with that after that. But that was a good story that we like
Wow.
to tell. Yeah.
Wow. That's beautiful. How about people's reaction to you as a religious? I
Sorry.
mean, you're in a field where there isn't a lot of women, and especially religious women. How do people react to your obvious modesty? And you spoke about not shaking men's hands. Is there like what is the reaction that people have towards you?
I mean, in general, it's super positive. I mean, a great story. I went to, I guess my Jewish colleagues are more scared of the fact that I don't shake men's hands than the clients themselves. I once went to Vienna to visit, excuse me, the very senior director of one of the largest banks in Vienna, and the kind of the analyst, kind of the lower ranking guy comes to meet me at the door, tries to shake my hand, and I say, pleasure to meet you. I don't shake hands for religious reasons, but very happy to meet you. Kind of which is like my catchphrase, and then kind of just move along. And he said, okay, that's fine. And then he directs me to the boardroom where all of these senior directors are sitting. I am the only female, and in this room full of other senior executives. And this guy walks in and he says, "This is Devora. She's from ICE, but don't try to shake her hand because she's religious and she won't shake." And so he did the work for me. He was just, I never had to go in. There was never an awkward conversation. I sort of just laughed and I said, "Thank you very much for your help," and you kind of just made it, a pleasant joke. But um, again, the world comes to you when you approach it with authenticity, and not trying. I know some people who make it more awkward or say that I have. I'm not feeling well, or they try to make some sort of, go around for not shaking hands. But the truth is, it's because I'm religious. I won't shake
Mhm.
your hand because I'm religious, and that's it. Take it or leave it. Um,
And the world respects that by and large.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, another great story was I was visiting one of the senior executive of one of the banks in Turkey in Istanbul, and again, the gentleman goes to reach for my hand, and I kind of give him a little smile. Nice to meet you. I don't shake hands for religious reasons, but it's a pleasure. And he looks at me and says, "Oh, which religion are you?" which is the first time I've had that question. I said, "Oh, I'm Jewish," and he says, "Oh, me too." I was, and he
Wow.
tells me, yeah, and he tells me I went to Talmud Torah. I went to Jewish day school in Izmir, which was traditionally a very Jewish city in Turkey. But tells me his whole life story and how he's, moved to Istanbul, but he's still Jewish and he goes to the holidays. And I said, okay, would you like me to put you in touch with the Chabad? Oh yeah, sure. I'd love to talk to them. So, you know,
Wow.
you really, from that conversation, find somebody else who might be interested in sort of exploring his Jewish roots and finding out a little bit more about, his heritage and his identity as a Jew. So
Hmm.
again, I think approaching the world with authenticity and seeing that the world will come to you and the success
Mhm.
comes after you when you approach the world being real.
Incredible. How about closer to home with your colleagues, with some of the colleagues, with the women who are at work with you? Have you had any discussions about Judaism?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, many of them will come and ask questions about Taras Mishpacha, which is something that they might feel less comfortable
That's
going to a rabbi about family
for
purity.
the family purity or the laws of
Yeah.
mikvah, right?
Thank
Hmm.
you. Yes. So they had this impression that if they go to ask a rabbi, he's going to be very strict and maybe he's going to give a very religious answer. But because I'm sort of normal and in the normal environment, it's easier to approach. So we've had many discussions about family purity, taras mishpacha. Um, Another really great example was every Pesach we try to get shmora matzah. Like the Chabad in Israel, it has these like small boxes of like three matzahs just to give for the first night. Well, in Israel there's only one night, but the first seder. Um, um, to try and encourage people to do the seder and to have matzah, because you'd be surprised there are many people in Israel who on Pesach they might have on Passover they might have a family dinner, but they might not actually have matzah at the table. If they have matzah, maybe it's the machine made, kind of square matzah. So we know the Rebbe was very much a proponent of shmor matzah, which is the matzah of faith and the matzah of healing. So it was for many years, my husband and I would bring these small matzahs to work and these small boxes and we'd give it out to whoever wanted. And there was one year, I think it was actually this past year, where I was probably about 5 months pregnant. I wasn't feeling great. So I was kind of, taking a bit of time off. And my colleague, who was more of a traditional, yeah, I wouldn't say he's super religious, but maybe keeps Shabbat. And he came to me and said, Devora, you didn't bring the matzahs this year. I said, I'm just not feeling, I've been not feeling so great. And he said, don't worry, I got it. And he went to his Chabad house and he asked his shaliach for matzahs and he brought them to work and he made sure that everybody got matzahs that year. So
Wow.
yeah,
So
it wasn't,
you're an
I was
example.
taken aback. Well, it's
Right.
amazing, right? It's amazing to think that from an example, like a couple of years of being with this person who initially had no interest, and I never thought people actually paid attention, even, but they do, and they're very
Wow.
inspired by it. And then for him to go on his own and then take initiative on his own to go ahead and do it was absolutely incredible.
Wow. Incredible. Um, Devara, do you mind if I share with our readers how old you are?
Okay.
So you're 32 years old. You have five children from the ages
Correct.
of newborn to 7 years old. You're a successful businesswoman. You're not only a successful businesswoman, but you bring Torah and Judaism and outreach to your workplace. So you're impacting so many people with whom you interact. Um, I'm sure a lot of our listeners are just thinking at this moment, like, how does she do it all? So many children, so young in age, so close together. She's young. You have a certain maturity about you and a certain confidence. Can you give us the secret?
Oh gosh, I think it's a lot of prayer for sure. I think as women, sometimes there is the notion that we might not have this obligation to pray the same way that a man has to go, to shul. He has to go to synagogue and pray 3 times a day and make sure that he's there. And sometimes we don't have that obligation. So maybe sometimes we lose touch with that sometimes. And I've mentioned to a lot of my friends and that I think it's important for us to pray, because as women we have such an ability to connect with God even on an informal level. So a lot of prayer for sure,
Mm.
making sure that just to carve out, even if it's just 5 minutes. There's a great siddur, a great prayer book that I recommend. It's called Tehillat Nashim, which is it's the Chabad nusach, the Chabad way of praying, but it's kind of split up into different tracks if you have how much, depending on how much time you have.
Yeah.
So I super recommend that because some days I've only got 5 minutes and maybe some days I got 20 minutes, but at least I've gotten something in. Um, I also think it's learning, constant learning. So we started, when I feel like after COVID, we started this shir, this weekly class for women on Shar HaBitachon, on the Gate of Trust, because it was really important after COVID to kind of revitalize and to bring back the idea of trust. So constantly learning, constantly um, creating community. I think reaching out to others. The more you give, I really think the more you get back. It sounds cliche, but certainly I see that we started hosting this year of the class. I think we saw a lot of blessings from that. One of my friends was having a difficult time. She asked me if she can host this year at her house because she wanted to have a little bit of blessings rub off on her, and she started hosting it. And it's really created a community of women that are trying to get better, to improve in their service of Hashem, in their service to themselves and to their families. So definitely prayer, community, and then I guess the most important thing is in anything is just creating a supportive environment. So I think today, we always love to look at the women and say, "Oh, she's a Wonder Woman. She's got it down. She's Power Woman." But really, it's from my husband. I mean, my husband
Mhm.
has been with me every step of the way. Um, when we were dating, I told him, I said, I love to cook, but I'm not going to be in the kitchen all day long, like unless it's Friday, I guess I can do that. But this is kind of the career that I have envisioned. I have a goal, I'd like to have a startup one day. I'd like to, create a new product, bring something to the world that's different. And he said to me, I'm 100% with you. And, without him supporting me and being there and just being the incredible partner that he is, like obviously none of this would be possible. Again, my mother-in-law, who's an incredible woman, helps us out a lot. My sister-in-law, who's here as well. My father-in-law, who's here. All of my family's in the States, so I don't have them physically here helping me, although verbally, of course, they're very supportive. But you got to have a supportive environment. You have to have somebody who's willing to commit with you and to be that partner. And he is 100% there. And when I rang the bell, it was important for me that he was there as well because my success is his success. It really is. It's our success as a family.
Hmm.
And that's how we approach the world. It's me and him against the world, and that's just what it is. We're partners.
Beautiful. Last question, and this isn't going to be what stocks we should all be buying at this point, even though I'm sure everyone's
I might have to
wondering
get
that.
clearance for that.
Do you have any tips with that?
uh, Check the official ICE website for the information.
But what vision do you want your children? I mean, God willing, in a few years when your children are bigger, they're grown up. What vision do you want them to have of you as a mother? What do you want them to remember of you as a mother? You said memories are very important to you, so I'm just curious. What would you like them to think of you as?
Well, I want him to be that kind of person who creates, like I said, creates those memories. So being there with them for all of their experiences, whether it's cooking for Shabbat or having challahs and making sure everybody has his own little challah in the shape that he wants because everybody has a different shape, or sitting them with their homework and on their different exams, and encouraging their curiosity, I think, is a big part of it as well. I love learning. I love exploring things with them. We read together all the time. We talk all the time. I want to be that example that when in the future when they get older and maybe they understand a bit more is that this is my mom but she's always going to be available for me no matter what. Any question that I have, I can feel comfortable to ask it from her. Um, I make it a policy to never ever lie to my kids, not even like a white lie. We say, "Oh, just tell the person at the door that mom's not home." I definitely think that honesty, as we mentioned many times, authenticity, being real, that is so important with children. They 100% know when you're kind of skating around the truth. And I am very, very honest with them about the situation that the war situation, obviously appropriate to different ages. You make sure that that's correct, but being very honest with your kids and knowing, and they should know that whatever you tell them is going to be 100% true to the best of your knowledge. Maybe your knowledge is not limitless, but you're always going to give them what you know to the best of your ability.
Mhm.
And then they know that they can rely on you and to be that
Mhm.
kind of stable foundation for the home, and ultimately that the home is that safe place where they can come back to. And when they have the home as a touchstone, then they're free to go out into the world with a strong foundation. And I think that that's ultimately what we all want from our kids. Of course, to be a chassid, yireh shamayim, a lamdam, to be a follower of the Rebbe, to be God fearing, and to be and to be knowledgeable. Of course, these are the things that we want from our kids. But at its core, it comes from a solid foundation of that's steeped in truth. And I think that that's what I try very hard to create, and my husband and I try very hard to create together.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us, Devora. This is really so inspiring to hear your words. And it's inspiring to see your perspective and your priorities that are so well, maintained in everything that you do. Last thing, you must be a very organized person, are you?
Um, I can say in some things I'm very organized, and other things I really, actually, my husband is very organized.
Organized.
He helped me stay, he's very good about helping us stay on track. So, um, yeah,
Beautiful.
it has to work together. So, you do need a lot of organization. Absolutely. You need to have good time management skills, but, again, it works together.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us, and continued success in your business endeavors and your career endeavors, as well as in your most important endeavor of raising your beautiful neshamos that actually chose you to be their mother. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, man, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Wow, what a great interview from Devora. When I first saw that picture of her at the New York Stock Exchange, I said, wow, I want to hear who this woman is. I want to get to know her a little bit, to hear what her story is. And at our first preliminary interview, when she was just telling me about herself, and when I saw her with her children and holding her newborn and just giving them the priority that they deserve, I knew that this was someone who I wanted to interview for all our listeners. I think, Devora, what struck me about her interview is how she says her children actually chose her, their souls chose her, and how that is going to be something that is something that she always remembers in parenting her children, and how she wants to provide them with the memories that are lasting, the memories that give them a foundation. So here we have this woman who is so out there in the world, such a success in the business world, yet remains her priority remains her children and her family, because she knows that that is what ultimately is the most enduring. And that's what I found truly extraordinary. If you enjoyed watching this podcast and you'd like to see more podcasts, please make sure that you are subscribed. You can find us on Chabad.org/extraordinary. We are also on all podcast platforms, streaming platforms. Make sure that you subscribe to us and that you can then get to hear the next episode that drops. Thank you so much for watching. We'd love to hear your comments. We read all of them, and it really inspires us when we hear back from you what you enjoyed and what you'd like to see. Thank you again for joining Ordinary People with Extraordinary Stories.